Imagine you're an archaeologist in the scorching Egyptian desert. Your shovel hits something solid, a hidden chamber sealed for 3,000 years. Inside, a sarcophagus whispers the name of a pharaoh history tried to erase. This is the untold story of the forgotten pharaoh, and it begins now. Chapter 1. The Shadows of Oblivion. Picture this. Ancient Egypt. A land where pharaohs were gods on earth, their names etched into eternity on towering obelisks and temple walls. But what if one ruler's legacy was deliberately wiped away, like footprints in the sand after a storm? That's the enigma of our forgotten pharaoh, whom we'll call Kamose, for now a name, pieced together from fragmented scrolls and whispered legends. In this chapter, we're uncovering why some pharaohs vanish from the records, setting the stage for Kamose's incredible tale. Let's start with the basics of how history gets rewritten in ancient Egypt. Pharaohs like Ramses II built monuments too, boast their victories, but successors could chisel away names of those they deemed unworthy. This practice, called damnatio memoria, was an ultimate punishment, erasing someone from the afterlife itself. For example, take Hatshepsut. Egypt's female pharaoh, her stepson Thutmose III, tried to scrub her from history by defacing her statues. Fearing her success overshadowed his own. Akhenaten, the heretic king who ditched the old gods for sun worship. After his death, priests smashed his images and buried his city under sand. Theirs aren't just dusty facts, they're real power plays that show how fragile immortality could be. Now, apply this to Kamose. Clues suggest he ruled during the chaotic Second Intermediate Period, around 1650 BCE, when foreign invaders called the Hyksos overran northern Egypt. As a native pharaoh from the south, Kamose might have led daring raids to reclaim lost lands, but his efforts clashed with the priests or rival dynasties. Practical tip for history buffs: if you're exploring Egyptian timelines, cross-reference king lists like the Turin Papyrus, like an ancient spreadsheet riddled with gaps where names were omitted. Look for mismatches between artifacts and official records. That's where forgotten stories hide. Diving deeper. Imagine Kamose as a young warrior prince trained in chariot warfare and Nile navigation. Legends hint he unified fractured tribes, with clever alliances, perhaps marrying a Hyksos princess to broker peace, a move that backfired when purists branded him a traitor. Examples from archaeology support this. A stele found in Karnak vaguely praises a smiter of foreigners, but the name is scratched out. Tips for aspiring storytellers: when researching, use tools like Google Earth to virtually tour sites like Thebes, visualizing where battles unfolded. Feel the drama Kamose's court buzzing with spies, his throne room echoing with debates over gods and gold. But why focus on oblivion? It teaches us that history isn't set in stone, it's shaped by winners. Kamose's erasure might stem from his radical reforms, like redistributing temple wealth to the poor, angering the elite. Compare to modern parallels. Think of how some leaders' contributions are downplayed in textbooks today. Practical advice: if you're into genealogy or writing fan fiction, start with primary sources. Translate hieroglyphs using apps like JEsh to uncover hidden narratives. Wrapping up. The Shadows of Oblivion reveal a pharaoh fighting not just enemies, but erasure itself. We've glimpsed the why and how of his disappearance with hints of his bold life. This sets us up for the next layer, his improbable rise from obscurity. Stay tuned as we peel back more in Chapter 2. Chapter 2. The Rise of a Hidden King. The sands of Egypt hide more than ruins. They conceal the spark of a leader who defied the odds. It's our forgotten pharaoh, Kamose. Didn't start as a legend. His story begins in the gritty south, far from the glittering courts of Memphis. In this chapter, we dive into his improbable rise to power during a time when Egypt was split, battered by invaders, and desperate for a hero. This is about how a nobody became a king, and what that tells us about courage and cunning in a fractured world. Let's set the scene. Around 1650 BCE, Egypt's north is under Hyksos rule, foreign kings with strange chariots and a knack for control. The south, centered in Thebes, is a patchwork of local lords, each vying for scraps of power. Kamose, born to a minor noble family, grows up in this mess. Think of him as a scrappy underdog, not a polished prince. Archaeological hints, like a weathered scarab found near Luxor, suggest he was a skilled archer and tactician by his teens. History tip: when digging into this era, check out the Rhine mathematical papyrus. It shows how Egyptians planned logistics, which Kamose likely mastered to organize his early campaigns. Picture a young Kamose, maybe 20, rallying villagers. With fiery speeches by the Nile's edge, he wasn't handed a crown, he earned it through grit. One story, pieced from temple graffiti, claims he won loyalty by outwitting a rival in a public duel, not with swords, but with riddles, showcasing his brain over brawn. For creators out there, this is gold for storytelling. Build your heroes' arc with small, relatable wins. Try sketching scenes in a notebook, Kamose dodging arrows in a dusty skirmish, or negotiating with skeptical elders under starlit palms. His big break? A daring raid on a Hyksos outpost. Unlike traditional pharaohs who leaned on divine pomp, Kamose fought guerrilla style, using the desert's cover to strike and vanish. Think Robin Hood meets Desert Warrior. Artifacts like bronze spearheads from Abydos hint at his hit-and-run tactics. Practical tip: if you're into strategy games or writing battle scenes, study ancient warfare YouTube channels like Kings and Generals break down chariot tactics that Kamose likely used. Visualize his band of loyalists, maybe 50 strong, ambushing supply caravans to fund bigger fights. But rising wasn't just about battles. Kamose had to charm or strong-arm local chiefs into backing him. Imagine tense meetings in mud brick halls where he promised land or protection. A clay tablet fragment mentions a southern star uniting tribes, probably him. For history nerds, cross-check this with Monato's Chronicles. They're messy, but mention obscure Theban kings. And here's a tip: use museum databases like the Met's online collection to find artifacts from this period. Real objects spark vivid ideas. The cost of his rise? Exhaustion, betrayal, maybe a lost love. Leading meant sleepless nights planning, knowing one misstep could end it all. Yet every victory each village won, each rival outsmarted, built his legend. This chapter shows a man carving his name in a world ready to forget it, setting the stage for his boldest move yet, challenging the Hyksos head-on. Chapter 3. The strike against the Hyksos. The Nile's waters churned under a blood-red sunset as Kamose stood on the riverbank, his eyes fixed north. The Hyksos, foreign rulers who mocked Egypt's gods and hoarded its wealth, loomed like a storm over the land. Now a king in the south, Kamose was no longer the scrappy youth of dusty villages. In this chapter, we follow his audacious campaign to strike at the heart of Hyksos' power, a gamble that would either forge his legend or bury it in the desert. By 1648 BCE, Kamose's Theban stronghold buzzed with purpose. His army, though small, was fierce farmers turned spearmen, archers honed by years of hunting ibex. A rare stela fragment from Edfu describes his plan: a bold push to retake Avaris, the Hyksos capital in the delta. Picture him in a torchlit tent, his generals leaning over a crude map, tracing the Nile's curves. The Hyksos had chariots and bronze swords, but Kamose had the river. He ordered boats built sleek, reed-crafted vessels to slip past enemy scouts under moonlight. The campaign began with a surprise attack. Kamose's flotilla glided north, silent as crocodiles. Near Memphis, his men struck a Hyksos garrison. At dawn, imagine the clash shouts: splintering wood, arrows slicing through mist. A cache of charred pottery from the site hints at the chaos. Storehouses burned, supplies seized. Kamose didn't linger. He struck again, hitting trade routes to starve Avaris of grain. Each raid was a dagger in the Hyksos pride, proving Egypt could fight back. But the Hyksos weren't idle. Their king Apophis sent chariots thundering. South. Picture Kamose on a rocky outcrop, watching dust clouds rise. His scouts reported enemy numbers twice his own. Yet, he turned the terrain against them, luring chariots into narrow wadis, where wheels stuck in sand. A warrior's account, scratched on limestone, tells of Kamose fighting in the fray, his bows singing as he felled a Hyksos captain. The victory was small, but loud. echoing across the south, drawing more tribes to his banner. The campaign wasn't just blades and blood. Kamose sent spies, merchants, and priests to sow discord in Hyksos cities. Whispers of rebellion spread, weakening their grip. Clay seal bearing his cartouche, found in a Delta village, suggests he bribed local chiefs to betray their overlords. Imagine him at night, writing coded messages by lamplight, his mind as sharp as his spear. But every step north stretched his resources thin, and whispers of doubt grew among his men. This campaign was Kamose's crucible, testing his nerve against a mighty foe. Victories piled up, but so did risks each, battle a roll of the dice. With Egypt's future at stake, his strikes lit a fire of hope, but darker forces were stirring, ready to challenge his dream of a united land. Chapter 4. The betrayal within. As Kamose's victories over the Hyksos rippled across Egypt, his name became a beacon of hope, but even as he pushed north, a shadow grew closer to home. Power attracts enemies, and not all wear foreign armor. In this chapter, we uncover the betrayal that threatened to unravel Kamose's dream, a knife in the dark from those he trusted most. Set against the backdrop of his growing legend, by 1647 BCE, Kamose's Theban court was a hive of ambition. His raids had brought wealth, gold from looted caravans, grain from captured outposts. Picture his palace, a modest sprawl of limestone halls, alive with advisors, priests, and warriors. A faded relief from Karnak shows him crowned, a falcon, amulet at his chest, symbolizing Horus' protection. But beneath the surface, loyalty wavered. A clay tablet, cracked but legible, hints at a plot, names of nobles scratched alongside ominous words like replace and throne. The betrayal began with a trusted general, let's call him Senon, a grizzled veteran who'd fought beside Kamose since his first raid. Senon's scars told of loyalty, but his heart turned to envy. Picture him in a shadowed corner of the palace, whispering to minor lords, promising them power if they backed a new king. Their motive? Kamose's reforms taxing temple wealth. To fund his warringard, the priests of Ammon, who saw their gold slipping away. Senon, swayed by their promises, began to weave a conspiracy. The plot unfolded during a festival for the Nile's flood. Imagine the scene, torches blazing, music echoing, Kamose toasting his men under a starry sky. Senon slipped away, meeting plotters in a riverside shrine. A servant's scrawled note, found decades later, describes their plan. Poison in Kamose's wine, a staged accident to blame the Hyksos. But a loyal scribe overheard, slipping a warning to the king at dawn. Picture Kamose's face, fury mixed with heartbreak, as he read the note, his trust in Senon crumbling. Kamose acted swiftly. He summoned Senon to a private council, pretending ignorance. In a tense standoff, surrounded by loyal guards, he confronted the traitor. Imagine the silence, broken only by Senon's stammered denials. The trial followed public, to show strength. Inscriptions from a Theban tomb describe the outcome. Senon exiled, his name struck from records, a fate worse than death. Plotters, minor nobles, faced execution, their bodies left for jackals. This betrayal shook Kamose. He doubled his spies, slept with a dagger under his pillow. Yet it steeled his resolve, proving he could outwit threats within as well as without. The conspiracy's failure rallied his loyalists, their cheers echoing through Thebes. But the cost was clear. Every step toward greatness invited new enemies. And the next threat would come from an unexpected source, testing Kamose's heart as much as his crown. Chapter 5. The heart of a King Kamose's throne stood firm after crushing the betrayal. But his heart faced a new battle. Amid the clash of swords and the weight of ruling, a personal struggle emerged, one that would define him as much as his victories. In this chapter, we explore the woman who captured Kamose's soul, a mysterious figure whose love and loss shaped his reign, set against the relentless push to unify Egypt. By 1646 BCE, Kamose was no longer just a warrior. It was a symbol of resistance, his name chanted in Theban streets. Yet in the quiet moments between battles, he found solace with Anyuket, a priestess of Hathor, goddess of love and music. A delicate amulet of turquoise, unearthed near a Theban temple, bears her name beside a lotus, hinting at her grace. Picture her, dark eyes, a voice like a lyre, moving through the palace with a dancer's poise. She wasn't royalty, but her wisdom grounded Kamose, offering him peace in a world of war. Their bond began during a festival for Hathor. Imagine the scene. Golden lamps flickering, priests chanting, Kamose watching, Anuket lead a ritual dance, her movements weaving a spell. They spoke late into the night, her words softening his battle-hardened edges. A rare papyrus fragment describes their love meetings by the Nile, where she urged him to temper war with mercy. For Kamose, she was a refuge, a reminder of life, beyond the throne. But love in a time of war carried risks. Anuket's influence stirred jealousy among advisors who whispered she swayed the king too much. When Kamose proposed making her his queen, priests objected. Her low birth clashed with their vision of divine lineage. Picture the tension. Kamose in his council chamber, fists clenched, defending her against robed elders. A clay seal from the period stamped with a broken heart suggests their bond faced a darker turn. Tragedy struck during a Hyksos counterattack. As Kamose led his army north, Anuket joined a caravan to deliver supplies. The Hyksos ambushed, and she was caught in the fray. A warrior's account, carved on a cliff near Aswan, tells of her death, struck by an arrow, shielding a wounded soldier. Imagine Kamose returning, his victory soured, finding her body draped in linen, her amulet clutched in her hand. His grief was silent but seismic, hardening his resolve. Kamose channeled his pain into his mission. He built a small shrine to Hathor in her memory, its walls etched with lotuses. The loss taught him that even kings are mortal, their hearts vulnerable. As he mourned, his dream of a united Egypt burned brighter, but new challenges loomed, rivalries that would test his vision and his crown. Chapter 6. The rivals of the South. Kamose's grief for Anuket fueled his resolve. But the South he fought to unify was fracturing under new pressures. As his armies pushed against the Hyksos, rival lords in his own lands sharpened their ambitions. In this chapter, we dive into the power struggles that tested Kamose's rule. As jealous nobles and cunning warlords challenged his vision of a united Egypt, threatening to tear his kingdom apart from within, by 1645 BCE, Thebes pulsed with the energy of war and worship, but not all hailed Kamose as their savior. His reforms redistributing land to loyal fighters and curbing priestly wealth stirred resentment among the old guard. A limestone ostracon from Deir el-Medina names two rivals Menkeeper, a wealthy lord from Abydos, and Teti, a warlord controlling the southern oases. Picture them, Menkeeper, draped in fine linen, scheming in his riverfront villa. Teti, grizzled and sun-scarred, commanding a band of desert raiders. Both saw Kamose's rise as a threat to their power. Menkeeper struck first, subtle but dangerous. He hoarded grain, choking Thebes' markets, and spread rumors that Kamose's wars bled the south dry. Imagine merchants whispering in bazaars, their loyalty wavering as bread grew scarce. A clay record from a local scribe notes Menkeeper's bribes to temple priests, urging them to curse Kamose's name during rituals. Meanwhile, Teti took a bolder path, ambushing Kamose's supply caravans in the desert. Shattered pottery along. Ancient trade routes tells of these raids, swift, brutal, meant to starve the king's army. Kamose faced these threats with a blend of guile and force. Picture him riding to Abydos, not with soldiers, but with a small entourage, confronting Menkeeper in his own hall. In a tense standoff, he offered peace land for loyalty or ruin. Menkeeper, cornered by Kamose's charisma and the crowd's cheers, knelt. The victory was bloodless, but resounding. Against Teti, Kamose turned to strategy, sent scouts to map the oases, luring Teti's raiders into a trap. A battle-scarred shield from the region suggests a fierce clash, Kamose's archers raining, arrows from cliffs, crushing Teti's band. These triumphs came at a cost. Kamose's spies grew busier, watching allies as closely as enemies. A papyrus letter, half-burned, hints at his paranoia orders to watch even loyal generals. Yet, his victories over Minkeeper and Teddy solidified his grip, with villagers chanting his name louder than ever. Imagine him standing atop a Theban hill, gazing north, his heart heavy but unyielding. The south was his, but the Hyksos still loomed. And a greater test awaited one that would demand more than swords or cunning. Chapter 7. The pact with the gods with the south united under his banner, Kamos's gaze turned to the divine. To solidify his rule and rally Egypt against the Hyksos, he needed more than mortal strength. He needed the gods' favor. In this chapter, we explore how Kamos forged a sacred pact with Egypt's deities, navigating the powerful priesthood and ancient rituals to cement his legitimacy, even as whispers of sacrilege began to stir. By 1644 BCE, Thebes was a city of temples, its air thick with incense and chants. Kamos, now a seasoned king, knew the priests of Ammon held sway over the people's hearts. A sandstone relief from Karnak shows him kneeling before Ammon's statue offering gold and cattle. Picture him in a linen kilt, head bowed, his voice steady, as he vowed to restore Egypt's glory for the gods. This wasn't just devotion, it was strategy. The priests, once wary of his reforms, could crown him a living god or brand him a heretic. Kamos began with a grand gesture, rebuilding the Temple of Hathor, damaged in earlier wars. Imagine workers hauling limestone under the blazing sun, carving lotuses in Anaket's memory. Papyrus from the period records his decree, festivals to honor Hathor, with music and offerings to draw crowds. The people cheered, seeing their king as pious, but the priests of Ammon watched closely, their loyalty fragile. To win them, Kamos gifted land to their temple, a move etched on a stela near Luxor. Balancing his earlier taxes on their wealth, his boldest act was a ritual pilgrimage to the oracle of Ammon at Siwa Oasis. Picture the journey, Kamos crossing. Deserts, his entourage battling sandstorms, guided by starlight. At the oracle's shrine, he offered a falcon carved from lapis lazuli, asking for victory over the Hyksos. A fragmented hymn describes the oracle's prophecy, a united Egypt under a falcon king. Kamos emerged, claiming divine mandate, his words spreading like fire across the south. Villagers carved his name on amulets, believing he was chosen, but divine favor came with tension. Some priests, loyal to old traditions, grumbled that Kamos's focus on Hathor slighted Amen. A scribbled note on a temple wall hints at their discontent, calling him too bold with the gods. Kamos countered by leading a public ceremony, sacrificing bulls before Amen's altar. Imagine the scene, blood pooling on stone, the crowd roaring, Kamos's silhouette framed by torchlight. It was a show of power, silencing doubters for now. This pact with the gods gave Kamos the spiritual armor he needed, uniting priests and people behind his war. Yet the Hyksos were massing for a counterstrike, and a new challenge loomed one that would test his divine claim against the chaos of battle. Chapter 8. The battle for the Delta with the gods' favor and the south behind him. Kamos set his sights on the ultimate prize, the Hyksos stronghold in the Nile Delta. The time for raids was over. Now he faced a war that would decide Egypt's fate. In this chapter, we follow Kamos into the brutal clash at Avaris, where his dream of a united Egypt met the full might of the Hyksos, testing his courage and strategy like never before. By 1643 BCE, Kamos's army had grown, bolstered by southern tribes and defectors from Hyksos lands. A granite stealer from Memphis describes his force, thousands of spearmen, archers, and makeshift chariots, their wheels rattling over dusty plains. Pictured him leading the march, his falcon amulet gleaming, the Nile glinting to his left as he neared Avaris. The Hyksos capital was a fortress, its mud-brick walls towering over the delta's marshes, guarded by King Apophis and his elite warriors. The battle began at dawn, under a sky streaked with clouds. Kamos's boats struck first, landing troops to cut off Avaris supply lines. Imagine the chaos. Oars splashing, arrows hissing, Hyksos sentries shouting alarms. A cache of broken spearheads near the site suggests fierce fighting along the river banks. Kamos, ever the tactician, split his forces, sending half to harass the city's gates while his archers targeted chariots from higher ground. The Hyksos countered with a cavalry charge, their horses thundering through the reeds. Picture Chamos in the fray, his bow drawn, shouting orders over the din. A warrior's carving on a delta stone tells of his bravery. He felled a Hyksos commander, rallying his men as panic spread. But the Hyksos were relentless, their bronze swords cutting through Egyptian ranks. By midday, the ground was slick with blood, and Chamos's army wavered. In a desperate move, he ordered a feigned retreat, luring Apophis chariots into a marshy trap. Mud slowed their wheels, and Egyptian slingers struck, turning the tide. The siege dragged on for weeks. Avaris walls held, but Chamos's spies inside the city, merchants and former slaves, stoked unrest. Charred papyrus records their work, sabotaged granaries, whispered rebellions. Starvation weakened the Hyksos, and a final assault breached the gates. Imagine Chamos entering Avaris, dust on his face, his men chanting his name. Apophis fled, leaving treasures and prisoners behind. The victory was monumental, etched on a now-faded obelisk, but it drained Chamos's resources and left scars on his army. This triumph marked Chamos as Egypt's liberator. But the cost? Was steep lives lost, alliances strained? As he stood amid Avaris ruins, a new challenge emerged, ruling a fractured land on the brink of collapse. Chapter 9. The weight of the crown. The fall of Avaris crowned Chamos as Egypt's liberator, but victory brought no rest. Ruling a land scarred by war and division was a heavier burden than fighting for it. In this chapter, we follow Chamos as he grapples with the challenges of governing a newly united Egypt, facing famine, rebellion, and the ghosts of his past, all while striving to hold his fragile kingdom together. By 1642 BCE, Chamos stood at the helm of a battered nation. Delta, once lush, lay ravaged by siege. The south, drained by years of war, teetered on famine. A cracked clay tablet from Memphis lists his decrees: rebuild granaries, repair canals, and tax the wealthy to feed the poor. Picture him in a Avaris-looted palace, now his seat, his advisors arguing over dwindling resources. Ace Falcon amulet, worn from battle, hung heavy around his neck. A reminder of his divine clay, manned its cost. The first crisis struck with the Nile's low flood. Fields withered and hungry villagers crowded Thebes' gates. Imagine Chamos walking among them, his face lined with worry, distributing grain from his own stores. A limestone relief shows him praying at a temple, arms raised to Hapi, the river god, begging for bounty. To quell unrest, he ordered festivals music and bread to lift spirits, but whispers of discontent grew. A papyrus scrap records a riot. In a northern village, where locals accused him of favoring Thebes over the delta, rebellion simmered in the north, where Hyksos loyalists hid among the marshes. A bronze dagger, etched with foreign symbols, hints at their plots, assassinations planned in secret. Chamos responded with force, sending troops to root out rebels, but also with mercy, offering amnesty to those who swore loyalty. Picture him meeting a former Hyksos captain, their handshake tense under torchlight, a gamble to win hearts. His reforms land for farmers. Freedom for slaves won some allies, but angered nobles who clung to old privileges. The weight of loss haunted him. Aniket's memory lingered in quiet moments, her lotus shrine a place he visited alone. A faded inscription tells of sleepless nights, Chamos pacing his chambers, doubting his path. Yet, he pressed on, building roads to connect north and south, their stones still visible near modern Luxor. His vision was clear, a united Egypt, strong and just. But as he poured his strength into his people, his own health began to falter, and a final reckoning loomed, one that would seal his fate. Chapter 10. The vanishing Legosychemous' reign had reshaped Egypt, uniting a fractured land under his vision. Yet, as his strength waned, the forces that sought to erase him gathered momentum. In this final chapter, we uncover the mysterious end of Chamos' life and the deliberate efforts to bury his legacy, leaving only whispers in the sands to hint at his greatness. By 1641 BCE, Kamose was a king worn by battles and burdens. His health, battered by years of war and sleepless nights, began to fail. A faded papyrus from Thebes describes him as gaunt, his once steady hands trembling as he offered incense to Amun. Picture him in his palace, the weight of his falcon amulet heavier than ever, his eyes fixed on the horizon. He had driven out the Hyksos and rebuilt Egypt. But the cost was etched in his body and the growing unrest among his court. His final days are shrouded in mystery. A limestone shard from Karnak hints at a sudden illness, perhaps fever, perhaps poison. Imagine him lying on a simple reed bed, advisors whispering nervously, priests chanting for his soul. Some say he named a successor, a young cousin named Ahmose, to carry his dream. Others claim he died alone, betrayed by those who feared his reforms. A cryptic inscription, half erased, speaks of a falcon falling at dusk, suggesting a quiet end for a king who burned so brightly. The erasure of Kamose's legacy began swiftly. Priests of Amun, resentful of his taxes, and nobles eager to reclaim power, worked to scrub his name. Temples he built were rededicated, his stele defaced, picture chisels striking stone, his cartouche chipped away under moonlight. A clay tablet from Memphis lists new decrees under Ahmose, ignoring Kamose's role. Even his tomb, likely hidden in the Theban hills, was sealed and forgotten, its location lost, unlike the grand valleys of later pharaohs. Why erase him? His radical changes land for the poor, curbed priestly wealth threatened the elite. A rare ostracon whispers of a pact among nobles to restore the old order, branding Kamose a disruptor. Yet traces of him survived. A lotus amulet here, a faded him there, buried in sand or temple corners. Imagined villagers, long after his death, telling tales of the southern star who defied invaders. Their stories outlasting stone. Kamose's vanishing act teaches us that history bends to power, but truth lingers in fragments. His dream of a united Egypt lived on, carried by successors like Ahmose, who built on his victories. As we close this tale, picture Kamose's spirit in the desert wind, his name a whisper that refuses to die. If this story moved you, hit that like button, subscribe for more forgotten histories, and comment below. What do you think became of Kamose's tomb?